We were talking about Brandon Miller in Alabama. Miller put up 41 points last night, including the game-winning layup in overtime. And this was after his attorney came out and clarified some things involving his situation with the shooting in Tuscaloosa, mostly just sort of confirming some of the main aspects that were being reported. He was at the scene of the shooting, and the weapon was in his car at some point, even though his attorney saying he never handled the weapon. That aside, Alabama Athletics also cleared Miller to play a couple hours before the game. Here was their statement. UA Athletics continues to cooperate fully with law enforcement in the ongoing investigation of this tragic situation. Based on all the information we have received, Brandon Miller is not considered a suspect in this case, only a cooperative witness. So it sounds like he may be working with the prosecution here. Today's statement from Brandon's lawyer added additional context that the university has considered as part of its review of the facts. Based on all the facts we have gathered, Brandon remains an active member of our team.
Yeah, I think we have to separate. Nobody has ever doubted whether Brandon Miller is a fantastic basketball player. That is one thing in this whole situation that there is no question about. Brandon Miller is an unbelievable talent, possibly number 1 overall pick, dropped 41, including some clutch plays last night. But yesterday, and you know what I came out and said about Nate Oates, what I thought about, there should have been a suspension before. I think this looks really bad on Nate. And then his comments were, and I know he had this big soliloquy right after it happened, but then the comments he made was very tone deaf and downplayed kind of the situation, in my opinion. And I thought that made him look like all he cared about is winning. And I still, sitting here right now, believe that. I was told yesterday, I got a bunch of messages from people, oh, see what Brandon Miller's lawyer said? That Brandon Miller didn't do anything wrong or there's no culpability because his lawyer said that. Do some of y'all not understand what a lawyer does, like for their client? Their job is to put their client in the best situation possible, both legally and from a PR perspective. Now, I'm not going to sit here, and nobody said yesterday that Brandon Miller should be in jail for 100 years. I don't think any of us even said that he should be in jail. But there should have been a suspension on the front end of this, and y'all are just now getting new information right before you find out about the South Carolina game that clears him even more. So there was still some sort of unknown there. But to come out and say, now I'm not going to go the way Clay Travis did and say the low-hanging fruit. That's such low-hanging fruit. I'm not going to sit here and do that. I'm not going to waste my time. But if you think that by having somebody's personal lawyer come out and say that they did nothing wrong, exonerates them, then you would be the worst judge of all time ever. That's like me sitting here and as a coach, as a head coach, not coming out and bashing my quarterback after he played bad. You do things for a reason because that's your job. What did you think the lawyer was going to come out and say? Well, to be honest with you, I don't know. I really don't know if what Brandon's saying is the truth. There's a lot of stuff we don't know. He could be guilty. Like, go outside. And the last thing I'll say, Cone, on this. A lot of people yesterday are like, oh, look at all these people that are talking bad about Alabama. There are teams that fan bases that don't like Alabama. Well, you know the one and only fan base I've seen defending Brandon Miller? It's Alabama. So by using your logic, it's an even worse look on that side. It's a horrible situation. I don't think Brandon Miller is somebody who needs to be on the FBI's most wanted list or anything like that. I think you should have suspended him, and then when the facts came out, you could have reinstated him. But that's why it looks bad now with the comments.
I was thinking about this last night, and I wanted to ask both you guys this because, like I said, you guys have coached. You guys have had to rely on 18 to 22-year-old young men to put food on your tables before. As far as the suspension, I still think there's a scenario here that could have existed with Brandon Miller not being suspended, but with the athletic department sort of leading, showing some leadership and getting out in front of this situation so that people have more information. So here's my question to you guys. I do agree when we're paying coaches, whether a head basketball coach, football coach, whatever, multiple millions of dollars a year, that we should expect them to incorporate morality and ethics into their decision-making and be leaders of young men. At the same time, they're being paid and they're providing for their families to win contests, to play the best players and to win contests. You guys know, we just talked about it with the Deion Sanders thing.
Hard balance.
I was thinking about this last night because yesterday I made a statement that I think Nate Oates should have made a statement well in advance as long as he didn't give out any information that was counter to the investigation. I got to thinking about last night. Do you think that the athletic departments of these universities in situations like this, the AD, Greg Byrne in this situation, or even the university administrators writ large, should be the ones to take these scenarios out of the coach's hands. And because there's an incentive factor with coaches, right? Like, look at this game last night. Brandon Miller, Alabama won that game because Brandon Miller showed up and had some of the greatest shots that we've seen this season. That helps Nate Oates keep his job and hit some of his incentives. Should the athletic departments and the university officials be the ones to come out and either suspend kids when they get the information that warrants a suspension, or to be the ones who come out from a PR and marketing standpoint? Because you can't ask a head basketball coach or a head football coach to also be an attorney or to be an expert marketer or public relations guy. Should it be the university and athletic departments who come out and lead with this information to take heat off coaches?
It should be both. It should be worked into tandem, because I get afraid if you start taking away a coach's ability to say whether he whether he shouldn't play a guy, then you also have the ability to tell him that he has to play a guy. That's the part that worries me. If you're going to come and sit here and tell me you hired me, now if it's a legal thing, that's totally different.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
That's totally different. But I always will err on the side of letting the legality will take care of itself. If you did something illegal, you're not going to play. That takes it out of the coach's hands. That takes it out of the administrator's hands. That takes it out of everybody's hands. That's almost an easy way out, like an easy route to find. It's when it's a situation like this where technically a law may not have been broken, but it is a bad look and you were involved in something bad. And again, I'm not relaying this to missing curfew, but most suspensions, like I said yesterday, don't happen for breaking the law. Like, I don't think you can sit here and say, all right, you can only be suspended if you break the law of the United States. That's the only way you can be suspended. You're never going to be able to build a culture up in a locker room like that.
Most team rules have nothing to do with it. I've never played on a team where one of the rules was you can't murder somebody.
Yeah.
Not that that's what I'm not talking about in this situation. I'm just saying, normally, because laws are laws, that's not a team rule. You know, what are your thoughts on
Well, I think everything starts with the head coach. Like, every head coach is different, but you have a set of team rules. Right, that's what you have. If it gets to the AD, when it comes to PR and stuff like that, you have people for that to tell you what the coach needs to say in the right moment. But it starts with the head coach. Do I think Brandon Miller should be suspended? Yeah, I mean, you're involved with a firearm. I think, and this is really weird for Alabama because you're used to dealing with the Nick Saban, these guys, and they're always ahead of everything.
Yeah.
No matter what it is from a PR standpoint, they're always ahead of it. So am I surprised Brandon Miller didn't get suspended? Yeah, to a certain extent. But the big thing with me was, especially when all this stuff happened, I just wanted to wait for everything to come out. I wanted to be fully transparent on what we see and what we know. And a lot of people, when it comes to media and stuff like that, they can say they didn't, but they have their fan hat on. That's what they have. That's what they have. And I will never, when it comes to stuff like this, sports are sports, they're important, but when someone's life in danger, when there's violence involved, I want all the facts. I don't care if you're an Alabama fan, an Auburn fan, a Tennessee fan. This is someone's future, someone's life got taken. So I do think it starts with the head coach when it comes to team rules. But if it works up to the AD can always come in and make the decision if he has to.
Well, to your point about waiting on more information to come out, I was talking to an attorney who actually went to Alabama Law School last night who said, look, this was just a hearing. Right? The prosecutor and the defense, they both want to keep as much information as close to the vest as possible anyway. That's why you're sort of getting little pieces here.
What happens with the preliminary trial? Like what happens when that starts?
And obviously there is discovery to be considered and they have to share evidence and things like that. But my point is, we may not know all of the information until this situation goes to trial. Now, it does sound like Brandon Miller is going to be cooperating with the prosecution. And hopefully at this point, now that this is blown up into a national story, they have at least been as truthful as they possibly can up to this point with what police uncovered in the investigation. Another good thing is all of this was on a video camera. That was another thing that Brandon Miller's attorney did say, is like, look, all of this is on camera, so we know the extent of his involvement, right? And we have the text messages, and he has cooperated with law enforcement with going through his phone. So at least there's that, but like you said, Blaine, there could be more information coming out soon.
YouTube, come here. Come take a seat in the trust tree. Let's have a talk. All right, here's what I need you to do. I appreciate you. You put us on, you show us. And fans of the show, subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell so you can find all our content, because that's how we make money being funny.